Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I'm sharing experiences, true paranormal stories from the web. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. And there are many ways to support the show. You can always share the show with others. You can rate and review it on your favorite podcast platform. You can also sign up for the Patreon feed for as little as $1 a month and get all kinds of extra content there. And you can also check out the merchandise store and find all different kinds of shirts, plus a few other items with designs made by friends of the show. Support is never expected but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. Also, please support our friends of the show here. That would be Jen, the Arcane Observer, who has her own channel, but also is the co-host of this show on Saturdays whenever possible. And Michael Strange of Trouble Minds Radio and the Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of amazing shows from other people and then myself as well, 24/7 online for free. And I think that takes care of everything for now. So thank you all for being here and listening in. Let's get to these true stories again. So let me get back to my document. This one says, I live in a really bizarre house. So many things happen here that are just absolutely weird. My first experience here was about 2 weeks after I first moved in. I'm an artist, and my roommate was also an artist, so this didn't really faze us at first. I woke up that morning and came out into the kitchen, and all of our pots and pans were stacked in a vertical tower in the middle of the floor. It was about my height. I'm 5 feet 5 inches tall. I didn't touch it. I was startled and I laughed because my roommate did strange things like this all the time. For example, bringing home caution tape and cones, hanging sticks from the ceiling, among other things. Anyway, I grabbed some water, went back to my room, shut the door, and then watched some videos. About 2 hours later, I came back out and my roommate was in the kitchen, just inspecting this tower of pots and pans. And he said to me, "Nice move." I was really confused. I looked at him and said, "I thought you did this?" He laughed and replied, "It wasn't me." We both stared at the tower, confused, and then I walked up to it and removed the top pot. Suddenly, the whole tower was just so fragile, like it was held together by some force until I touched it. Then it started just toppling down. He helped me disassemble it. This was the last time that happened, but it was pretty unforgettable, and that's where that one ends. So it sounds like it's an active location, but this seems to be maybe the most unusual thing that happened there, which I've heard of things being moved. I don't know if I've ever heard of a stack of objects quite like that. And the fascinating thing to me as well about this event here is the way the writer says it seemed like there was this invisible force that was holding it all together the way it was until the writer touched it. Uh, that to me is really makes me wonder. It was the force, the energy, was that an intelligence, consciousness that did this? Was it somehow the energy of the two people living there? Again, people do sort of give off energy, and there's a lot of paranormal activity that is said to come from just the energy of living people. Uh, that's quite the manifestation of it, if that's the case. Uh, I don't know. It's impossible to know what set that up and how it worked, but that's a neat account there, and it's I like it in a way because it's not it's not like a Hollywood movie. It's not supposed to be. It's not anyone being attacked. It's not anyone being frightened. It's just this odd thing that happened. Excuse me. That neither of the people in a location that were living there could explain. So I thought that was a really neat one to share, and I like those where it's basically harmless and the people aren't too freaked out and all those things. I think those are always fun to share. Let's move on to the next one. Where do I start? My friend, we will call C, has a mirror that she says came out of an old hotel that they shut down or renovated, and somehow it has been hers for years. This mirror, got something in my eye, there we go. This mirror is very, very heavy, and she added the stained glass effect that borders it. I noticed when first entering her place, uh, before I knew about this mirror at all, that her apartment was a spiritual hotbed like I'd never seen before. I grew up very connected to the spirits around me. My mother was something like a spirit speaker, and believe it or not, she could make the sky rain. Her siblings will tell you this also, and her mother before she passed. Anyway, I can pick up on spiritual activity and communications all around me all the time, almost like a veil between us and the dead exists around. Uh, Let me see here. Exists. I'm sorry. I lost my spot. Exists. And for me, that veil is so thin that it is almost non-existent. I know it sounds ridiculous, and I know it's hard or impossible to believe, but I absolutely can communicate with those who have passed away. I have narrowed all the spiritual activity we have experienced down to this mirror here. When I'm around it, it's like a direct line to the other world opens, and spirits, good good and evil, try to make contact like crazy. This is scary most of the time, and something I never really acknowledged because I guess I was afraid people would think I was crazy. But anyhow, I want to know if anyone else has experienced portals in mirrors or spirits in them, either traveling through them or stuck there. I'm not sure which. Please let me know what you think of this mirror. Has anyone else had a spiritual experience when around a certain item? And this is always fascinating to me because unless you look into these things or you read a lot of these accounts of experiences, you might not be aware that mirrors, especially older mirrors, it seems, do seem to be portals, to be windows, to have that possibility of either being uh, a way to look into other places, or at the very least, or in some cases, a way for consciousness, for spirits, for other beings to travel through. This has come up again and again in the show over the years here, where some stories of experiences they do revolve around mirrors. And I've had a couple of experiences myself with mirrors over the years. Not a ton, but enough. Um, just a couple. And I don't know. It's odd. If there's let's I've talked about them before. Basically, I had in this house where I used to live on and off because so my parents divorced when I was little, and so I would spend time going back and forth between from my dad to my mom and back and forth. And at one point, my dad and my stepmom at the time in their house that they had, um, the room that I would sleep in was also kind of used somewhat for storage here and there, which wasn't a problem. It was big enough room to do that. But at one point, they had there were these two mirrors that were facing each other, and they seemed to be, to me anyway, they had very ornate frames, and they were facing each other. And this was 20 plus years ago, and so I had no idea about anything having to do with paranormal and mirrors. But I remember whenever, as long as those two mirrors were there, whenever I'd be over there, I never liked to pass between them, and I had to get to the bed. But I would never just stand there in that spot where the two mirrors were at. And I never knew why. I never knew why I didn't like that feeling until many years later. There was also one time here in this apartment where, so in my bathroom, of course, I have one of those medicine cabinet mirror light fixture combination shelves. I don't know what you call them. Uh, and I've never had a problem with it before. Well, this one night, as I was walking to the bathroom, and of course I had the lights off because my eyes are sensitive to light and everything, and so I've always just been I prefer having all the lights off in my apartment whenever possible. And as I was walking to the bathroom, I hadn't even got in there yet. I had this feeling that there was a presence, and even before I got to where I opened the door, I could just feel that it was. I could feel where it was at, and where it was at was right in the same space as mirror, the mirrored sliding doors of the cabinet. So I literally went into the bathroom, did what I had to do, and intentionally did not look at the mirror the whole time because I could just sense there was something or someone there, and I did not. I couldn't. I didn't really know if it was negative or evil. I just knew I did not want to. I didn't want to find out more than I knew already that there was a presence there. And so I went in there, and then I went out, and then that never happened again with that mirror. I don't know what was going on, but so yeah, mirrors can be these sort of hotspots for paranormal activity. Not doesn't mean it has to happen all the time, but it can happen. So let's get on to the next one here. This one says, just wanted to share these two slightly weird stories that happened a few years ago. One night, my family and I drove to a rural location because we wanted to watch a comet and needed to get away from the light pollution. We parked at some old farm, everything dark, no lights from houses in sight. But after a few minutes, we all started hearing a flute. None of us could say where it was coming from. It was windy too, so that made it even more difficult. It sounded it sounded really eerie and beautiful. And after a while, a very high opera voice started singing too. But it was so quiet, barely noticeable in the wind, and so gentle that it was difficult to say if something was an instrument or a voice, or even if any of this was real or imaginary. I thought I tried recording it, but I couldn't find any recordings afterward. But it would have been too quiet anyway. If it hadn't been for my family hearing it too, I would have thought I imagined it. But admittedly, we were still pretty close to the city, plus there were some houses nearby, so it was probably someone playing music. and the wind carried it over in a really cool sounding way. But it was still memorable and felt pretty magical and weird. Strangely, I had a similar experience some months later. I was walking through the woods and suddenly heard really weird music, like if let me see, I lost my spot. Like if meditation ambience music was being played by a church organ. It was uncomfortably loud. Weirdly, I thought, "Oh, that's from the church right outside the woods," and went on. Even had a clear image of it in mind, although I felt a bit weird and confused. Only after I got out of the woods did I remember that there was no church there. I'm still baffled by this one. I've lived there my whole life, walked past there twice every week, but somehow, for 10 minutes, I made myself believe there was a whole building that simply doesn't exist. Personally, I'm still explaining this one as being stressed and not thinking properly, but it's still so weird. So, yeah, some nighttime music fan and 10 minutes of my brain not functioning are my ways to read. I'm sorry, ways to of explaining these. But I'm curious what you all think if anyone bothers to read this. Also, does anyone have similar experiences? Music in the woods isn't necessarily that odd, I guess, but I'd still like to hear if you have had something similar happen and what you think it could have been. So that's a strange one because I've heard of that of music in the wind in the wind in the woods and in the wind. Uh, and so I don't know. It could be their reasoning behind things could be accurate. Um, it could be from places nearby, but also I wonder about that because they said that to everybody there involved in the first experience, it felt magical, it felt different. So I wonder if they mean that in the sense that it didn't, there was an additional feeling to it that they got besides the sound, or if it was just the way it sounded. That second experience, I wonder if they were picking up on I don't know, another dimension or another time where there was a church there nearby, um, and that just wasn't there in this reality, and the sound was coming from there, and they were somehow picking it up. I really find that idea fascinating as well. So that's hard to say, but yeah, I thought that was a neat one as well. These two different cases of them hearing things once with family, so not even on their own, and then not knowing what was coming from, where it was coming from, or how it was happening. So um, let's move on to the next one here. I don't know if we'll have. I wanted to get through three more, but we'll see what happens. This says this happened around 30 minutes ago. It was just after 4 a.m. and I was getting ready for bed. Before I went upstairs, I decided to check our porch to see if our cat was there in case she wanted to come inside. She's really stubborn and refuses to be indoors during the night, but I want to add that I'm not the one letting her outside. No matter what I tell my family, they let her out anyway. I promise I'm just as angry as anyone else would be. Anyway, our cat wasn't there, so I decided to lock the door. Then, right as I was about to turn off the light, I looked out and saw something staring at me. It wasn't my cat, because the figure was human. I only saw it for maybe a second, but it was pale and hiding behind one of our chairs. It then ducked and disappeared. I didn't investigate because that's stupid, and honestly, I just decided to pretend I didn't see it. So I turned the light off and went to my room. It's now been about 30 minutes and I'm scared to sleep. We have glass sliding doors, but they're only open just enough so our cat can get in and out from the porch. She's also smaller than a regular cat, so not much else can get in except for her and smaller animals. Uh, nothing, nothing had changed about the doors, though. They were still the same. I also heard weird noises around the house now that I think about it, like joints cracking and the floor creaking. I tried to play it off as the house just making noises because it's old, but the noises were very distinct, and they did freak me out a little. To end this, I want to say I've always seen and heard things my entire life. I don't always know what to believe, but I do know what I've seen, and I know what I saw just now was real. I've seen something similar in the corner of my room before, and I'm hoping it isn't the same one. I'm so sick of this. And that's where that one ends. That's a lot to deal with. Um, I always talk about this. There seem to be sort of levels of sensitivity to where some people say that I've had a ton of experiences uh, based on everything I've talked about over the years here on the show and on other shows. And yes, I've had several. I do have them here and there. But there are also people out there I know and I've heard about who have paranormal or unexplained or just unusual experiences with things that other people usually don't sense. They have experiences just all day, every day. And so compared to them, I don't really have that many experiences. But it all depends on again what's going on. And so yeah, I don't know. It sounds like maybe they are in that account there. They are a sensitive person to whatever else is out there, and dealing with all those things that well, it would be a lot. I can't imagine dealing with odd things happening, like I said, all day, every day. So, um, so yeah, I let's see if we can get there. We may make this one. We may make this one a long one because I really want to get through these next two. This one says, uh, "Do you all believe that loved ones can send animals to check in on you?" Some context. My grandfather and I were thick as thieves. I like that saying. That's a neat one. He helped raise me. We would prank my mother and my grandmother, have coffee together after bed, and sing constantly to the point that my mother couldn't handle us for long periods of time. I loved him so much and was so devastated when he died. I am 29 now, and he died a few years ago. I was honored to have him as long as I did. He loved all types of animals, but especially cats and sea creatures. Uh, Outside of seeing him every day or calling him weekly in my adulthood, we would go to Florida every for vacation every year. We had a timeshare, and we would always go with my mother and grandmother. I'm in that timeshare this morning with just my mom. I was thinking about my grandpa a lot this trip, since it's only my second trip here without him. I went out to the bayside this morning to do some shelling. It started to drizzle, but I was alone on the beach and didn't mind. All of a sudden, I heard a huff from the water. I looked up, and there was a manatee uh, about 15 feet from me. He just floated there for a few minutes, and I watched him. I smiled and started to cry, just overwhelmed with positive emotion. Then he was gone. I didn't think a lot of it either, other than I had never seen manatee on the bayside before. I told my mom shortly after. She said, I've never seen a manatee out there. Grandpa said he'd seen them in the bay, but I haven't. I then remembered all the times he would come get me, saying he saw a manatee or a dolphin out there, but then I would but then I would never see them. Lost my spot. Okay. I'm wondering if he sent my friend the manatee to check on me. He visited me in my dreams for a year after he died, but since then I haven't seen or heard from him. I wonder if he just wanted to let me know he was okay. Anyway, I wanted to share or post a wholesome paranormal event this morning, and that's where that one ends. That is fascinating. I've heard of that with other animals, never quite with something that large or in the water like that. But again, if consciousness does continue and it can contact other consciousness, then why couldn't it sort of reach out to other beings and direct them to appear as signs? That doesn't seem impossible. So we're gonna go through this last one here, and like I said, this is just gonna be a longer episode. Maybe I'll save these two that I recorded tonight and use them in the future as needed as well. This one says these two episodes that I recorded tonight. This one says, to be honest, I really don't know if this is paranormal, but a part of me does believe it's there and that it is. I don't remember what age it started at, but I'll guess around 13 or so. I just somehow knew I wasn't exactly alone, like being alone in my room or in the house in general. I'm 19 now, and I still feel its presence. To me, it's like a spectator. It just watches, and I sense when it is there. I had originally thought it was just a thing that seems to linger in the house, but there would be times when I'd walk home and I'd sense the fact someone was watching me go. Yes, you could say it's probably just paranoia there for being alone and walking home from school, but it didn't feel like it. I wouldn't say I'm psychic or a medium, but there's just something about this being that makes me question if I'm able to just sense other beings in this world. I'm not sure if anyone else has experienced a spectator like me. That's what I'm calling it. But if anyone has any info about it or can kind of give their input, I'd be much appreciated. It'd be much appreciated. There we go. If I could use words. Thank you. That's where that one ends. That one, that one is an amazing one in one way, in that it's not. There's no apparitions. There's no sounds. There's there's so much there that is not there, and yet I kind of know what they mean. I've been to a few places over the years, had a few experiences where I never saw or heard anything. I just felt like like they said, a presence. I've shared this story before a couple of times over the years. At one point, my dad had moved into a house in the town where I live, and but he was going to I believe he was moving. Yeah, I think he was moving in, or was it moving out? Maybe he was moving out. I actually think it was he was moving. I forget. Anyway, basically the point is, he was coming and going. He and people that were doing the moving. I think it was moving in. That's right, because there was no TV yet. They hadn't brought the TV in yet. So my dad asked me if I would come over and just sit in the house while he and other friends and family were just bringing stuff in. And so I was sitting there in the living room, and I knew the sound of my dad's vehicle and everything, and their voices, and so I was in the house alone. Actually, it was an apartment, but he had the bottom floor of the house was an apartment, and the top floor was another apartment. And I was sitting in the living room, and I just in a chair, and didn't have anything to do, didn't have anything going on, just sitting there thinking and listening. And I got the sense of someone coming to the entrance of the living room and looking around the corner at me. And I looked in that direction, and I'm legally blind, but not totally blind. And so I don't always see details, but if there was someone there, I would have seen a figure if there was someone there physically. But I didn't see anything, and this presence just was there. Came around the corner just for a second, just looked around, and then retreated, and then it was gone. And all the time that whenever I would go and visit my dad at this in this one location, I never sensed it there again. And so I totally understand what the writer is talking about there, in a way. This idea of just a presence, a sense of other consciousness nearby, um, without any other obvious signs of it. So I do think that is possible, based on, again, this person's experience, my experience, and other people's experiences as well. I'm sure there's others out there that have had similar experiences. So anyway, that's gonna do it for this episode. Went overtime here, but like I said, I think we'll just save these and use them for backup episodes in the future, and or longer shows for the weekends when we need them, and go from there. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.